you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. The bill before you would ban the manufacture, possession, and use of high-capacity magazines. I've introduced this bill for the last few years since I've been up here in the House. And I'm actually coming at it this year from a bit of a different perspective. In previous years, there were so many emails that I received, both for and against, that just the volume was so high, I didn't feel like I could respond to them all in a real substantive way. And for whatever reason this year, the volume was a little less intense, and so I felt like I could legitimately try to respond to them, and have actually had some really good sort of substantive back and forths online, and some dialogue with folks that have been helpful in really getting a better sense of how different people think about this issue and this bill. It's been really a lot of respectful online dialogue, which I've really appreciated. A lot of times on these issues from both sides, that's not always the case. And I'll admit myself that in previous years when I've introduced this bill, it might not have been with the most respect towards the issue, as far as really addressing that there is a cost to this legislation, because there is. If we pass this bill, there's a significant number of law-abiding citizens, responsible gun owners in Rhode Island who wouldn't be able to use high-capacity magazines, either for recreation and pleasure, or for a potential defensive situation that they might envision down the road. And I just want to be upfront that is a cost. I appreciate that. As someone who didn't grow up with guns being a big part of my family tradition, I probably can't totally appreciate the cost that has for a lot of people. But I do want to, say that I respect that is a cost. And I'm here, and I'm passionately introducing this bill because I also really believe that there is a very important and concrete benefit to this legislation. The reality is, in this country, a huge portion of the mass shooter tragedies and situations involve the use of high-capacity magazines that people use in order to shoot as many innocent people as possible, as quickly as possible, before having to reload. We know that in a lot of these situations in the past, it's been that moment when someone had to reload that the situation was able to be brought under control. And so I think it's safe to say that there's a benefit to trying to keep these tools out of the hands of folks that should not have them, that might use them in that kind of situation. I also want to be upfront that this bill wouldn't 100% guarantee that no one could get their hands on it. That's true. I'm sure it'll come up. Rhode Island is one state. There are other states surrounding us who passed this as well, but we are one state. It might be possible to get it from another place. And even beyond that, there's always a black market. So it's not going to be 100% that someone couldn't get their hands on this. But I think we can also agree, based on the laws of supply and demand, that when you significantly decrease the supply of something, it's going to make it a lot harder for a lot of people to get their hands on it. It's creating another obstacle and barrier. It's not necessarily about, law-abiding citizens will follow this and people who are going to break the law anyway won't, because supply and demand affects everyone whether you follow the law or not. This is about creating a significant barrier to someone who might use this in a mass shooter situation from getting their hands on it. And ultimately, that's about protecting innocent human lives. So again, we should be honest, this is a cost-benefit analysis. Those of us in this room are probably going to have different analyses on where the cost is and where the benefit is. I'm here because I think we need to put a whole lot of value into the possibility of protecting and saving potential human lives. I think that needs to be the value of that is enormous, and therefore we should really put real consideration into legislation like that, because to me the cost-benefit analysis lines up to the side of saving possible fellow Rhode Islanders from what could be a real tragedy. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Representative Reenberg? Representative Flippy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative Reenberg. So why was the number 10 chosen?
Number 10 was chosen because you have to choose a number, and that's an area that's it's much higher than what we regulate for certain animal hunting,
Has there been any analysis done on the percent of firearms within the state of Rhode Island that this would affect?
I believe there are some folks who are going to be speaking later who could address that better than me.
But as of now, we don't know how many people this would turn into criminals within 120 days of us passing this bill if they don't fail to remove the high-capacity magazine from the state, sell it to a licensed firearm dealer, or surrender it to police. We don't know how many people would be criminals if we didn't do that.
I don't have that number. There might be someone coming up who does.
Okay. And did you realize that a large portion of handguns out there actually have magazines that are larger than 10 rounds? Mm-hmm. This isn't just affecting what some people like to call assault rifles, even though that might not be the proper definition. This affects personal handguns.
Right.
You're aware of that?
Right.
Okay.
Again, the idea is that high-capacity magazines would allow someone in a mass shooter situation to shoot as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, before they have to pause and reload, which again is a moment that allows for folks to take control of that situation, whether it's an AR-15 or a handgun.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Representative Corves.
Representative, I can appreciate your opening comments with regard to the sensitivity you're trying to show, understanding those individuals who would be affected by this. So let me just say at the offset that I can appreciate you including that in your speech. But I think there's a number of failings with the bill, but I think that the most glaring one is the fact that when you talk about supply and demand, I really do believe that the only people that will be affected by this would be law-abiding citizens. The criminal element will not be affected by this in any form. Okay, they will get whatever capacity they want in any form that they want. And I just wanted to bring that to the forefront respectfully.
And I'd say that when you look at the kind of person who commit some of these atrocities around the country, a lot of them aren't, sort of hardcore criminal elements that might be tapped into networks and know about how to, engage in black market and get their hands on things. A lot of them are mentally unstable people for whom, if you put up some significant obstacles and barriers, very well might not be able to get their hands on them.
Any further questions for Representative Reenberg? Representative Roberts.
I'm just wondering if you realize that unlike TV... Thank you. I'm just wondering if you realize that unlike TV, which makes it look like up here that, it takes one shot to hit somebody, which it could, but the potential of that happening is really much slimmer than what TV shows what that looks like, because usually you would have to fire several shots before you even hit somebody. I mean, it's not as easy as it looks like on TV. So that's one thing I wanted to state. And the other is that I'm just wondering if you said that this is this is just a cost analysis thing. So I think that there is a lot of Second Amendment support in this state, and these people do not feel that it's worth that cost to take away those rights. Because, for example, if I'd like to know, with a disabled person, say that you were disabled or an elderly person, and you're sleeping and somebody comes and intrudes into your home in the night. Now, if you call the police, of course they're going to try and respond as fast as they can, but they can't always get there. You could be way out in the woods. They can't always get there within 2 minutes. And a lot can happen within that first 2 minutes. So what would you do in order to save yourself? Or what can these people do if we take away their Second Amendment rights?
I guess I have a few thoughts. One, we're not talking about taking away Second Amendment rights. We're talking about limiting high-capacity magazines. It's been ruled constitutional in a number of judicial systems in our country. Again, as you mentioned, there are people for whom the cost-benefit analysis I'm describing does not line up with their position, their opinion, and I appreciate that. And that's going to be the case on a lot of the issues. It's worthwhile pointing out, though, that while there's a lot of those people, public polling in our state has consistently shown that a very strong majority of Rhode Islanders do support this legislation. For them, that analysis does work out.
What polling is that, please?
There was a poll by the Rhode Island Coalition Against Gun Violence that found, I don't have the exact number, but 75%. And that was who yeah.
I'm sorry, is that the Michael Bloomberg group? No? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Representative Mckinty, you had a question?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Aaron, these high-capacity magazines, do we have any limit right now as to how many rounds they can hold or can buy? I have no idea.
As far as I know, no. Again,
So you could buy 300 rounds?
Talking about deer hunting and duck hunting, we do have limits. We don't in this area.
Thank you.
Vice Chairwoman Aello.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Reenberg, can you tell us what our neighboring states do on this, and how many other states across the country have limits on purchase or ownership of high-capacity magazines?
I don't know what the number across the country. If you do, I'd love for you to share it. I do know that our neighboring states, Connecticut and Mass, have both passed legislation similar to this.
With 10 as the limit, or is it lower?
I'm not sure. I'd thought it was 10. 10.
Thank you.
Representative Coughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Reenberg, you've stated that bills of this type, close to yours, have passed constitutional muster in the courts. Can you tell us which courts have approved this?
I don't have that on hand, but I'll look it up, and I can pop back up maybe and share it if you give me a minute.
Yeah, could you tell us if they were state courts, federal district courts, U.S. appeals courts? Has it gone to the Supreme Court yet? I'd be very interested to find out. Thank you.
Representative Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Reenberg, the one thing I'm thinking about that has been mentioned here is, I consider guns, it's obviously it's a thorny issue because the Second Amendment's there, it's real, it exists, and it needs to be respected. On the other hand, guns represent a public health crisis. In 2014, in the last year that we have numbers from the CDC, there were tens of thousands of gun deaths in the United States. Was this bill crafted with an idea? Well, I'd ask you to talk about this as an argument for the bill. It seems to me that in a mass shooter situation where somebody, which is what we're trying to get to, where somebody comes into a public place with a firearm or a collection of firearms and starts shooting up the place and killing people, that a magazine limit would provide a break in the action and perhaps provide crucial seconds for a responding officer or anyone who's responding to that person to perhaps stop the action. It seems to me, and I know that there are proponents out there who are going to come in and testify against this bill, who are going to talk about professional shooters who can swap out a magazine in no time flat. And I've seen the Mythbusters with the champion guy who can swap them out faster than in less than half a second. But I'm talking about the average guy, the average shooter, the average mentally unstable person who does this. It seems like that magazine limit is going to provide some few seconds that in which perhaps a life would be saved, and it seems to me that that's valuable. Could you speak to that?
I mean, I think it's exactly as you said. There have been that has been how a number of these tragedies have been cut short. How the number of wounded and dead in some of these situations has been limited. It's when the shooter had to swap it out, and there was that pause, either for brave bystanders or for law enforcement who's there, giving them a chance to take control of the situation. That's why we're talking about this now. This has the potential to save lives.
Who should we put for you guys? You? Any further questions for? Yes, Representative Coughlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Reenberg, since you're going to research the constitutional dimension, I've really got two questions along those lines. One, how it's made out on Second Amendment issues, and the other is whether or not, or how often the statute has been found to be overly broad in its ramifications. Thank you.
Any Representative Price?
Thank you, Chairman. So I guess one of my concerns is suppose this overreaching bill that you're proposing passes. What would you propose to do with all the magazines that are already owned by lawful, law-abiding gun owners in the state of Rhode Island?
So that's laid out in the provisions of the legislation. It lays out a number of different opportunities and options for people to take.
So you're proposing confiscation of magazines? Is that what you're proposing?
You can take a look at the legislation.
No, I'm just asking you.
It includes
yes or no?
It includes.
You're proposing confiscation of magazines that are above 10 rounds?
No.
Okay.
You can take a look at the legislation.
So, yeah, I guess my...
Read it for you if you... I don't have it in front of me. So there's... So, again, the options, and Rep. Flippy mentioned these. Remove the high-capacity magazine from the state, sell the high-capacity magazine, surrender the high-capacity magazine to the appropriate law enforcement agency. Those are the options.
So confiscation is one of them, correct? Surrender? Isn't surrender it confiscation?
Sure, someone can choose to give it to the appropriate law enforcement agency. Yep.
So wouldn't this make law-abiding citizens criminals for having these magazines that they already own, and there haven't been any problems with them owning them? So are you proposing to make criminals of law-abiding citizens by proposing this law?
Legislation would
Yes.
ban the use and possession of high-capacity magazines. It sets out the ways for people to remove high-capacity magazines from the state, and it has, and it's in law and has enforcement for after that period.
Okay, thanks.
As they've done in our neighboring states. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, any further questions for Representative Reenberg? Thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Member of the
Representative Reenberg, did you want to come back up, or you want some more time?
Yeah, this. Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. This is not going to be a comprehensive list, and apologies for not having it in front of me when I introduced it, but just a quick search found that March of 2015, the Federal Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld California's high-capacity magazine ban. Just in February of this year, Federal Appeals Court upheld Maryland's ban on high-capacity magazines, and there's a few others. So I can put in some more time and shoot you an email with the full list or to the full committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Hang on, Representative Reenberg. Whip Flippy.
Thank you. And that's an analysis under Second Amendment jurisprudence, but we have Article 1, Section 22 in this state protecting our right to keep and bear arms, which is actually more protective of the Second Amendment. So I just, while we're always bound by the floor of federal case law, our state constitution, in my opinion, provides us with greater protections when you read the plain language of it. So I don't know that we're going to entirely, if the Supreme Court of the United States says it's okay, I don't know that our state Supreme Court would say it would be okay. You follow me?
That's interesting, and I'm not an expert in this by any means. Just quickly responding to Rep. Agello's question, the states of California, Colorado, Connecticut, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and New York have all passed legislation very similar to this. Virginia has something that's not quite this, but is somewhat similar.
Thank you, Representative Reenberg. Representative Roberts has a question. Representative Reenberg.
By the Rhode Island Coalition of Domestic Violence. Would you please get me a copy of that information?
Yep.
Okay,
absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you.